Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is Karl Howard. Karl is, well, first and foremost, a fellow Brit living out in Australia. Similar to myself, he is at heart an engineer. He has an engineering background. He's worked for the Royal Air Force in the UK and has now moved over to Australia and works as head of engineering for a business here in Australia. So I'm looking forward to having a chat to him and really sort of understanding a bit more about where his I guess passion for the industry come from, what a career looks like in the engineering field, finding out a bit more about that, and for Karl to share his journey and for him to share some wisdom. So Karl, with that introduction, welcome to the show, mate. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Joe. And thanks for having me on. As I say, I've seen a couple of these now, and so it's great to collaborate with yourself.
Appreciate it, mate. So, but just to kick it off, firstly, you, as I introduced you, a fellow Brit moving over to Australia. You've moved over here more recently than I have. How have you found life over here? How have you found the move so far?
Yeah, Australia as a country, it's fantastic. So I've got a young family. So I've got two kids, 8 and 5. That was a primary driver for moving over here for us. We actually moved over in the height of COVID, so July 2020. Okay. And it's almost 3 years now. Yep. Don't regret the move. As I say, fantastic lifestyle for myself, my wife and the children.
Yeah. How did you get over in July 2020? I thought the borders were all pretty locked down at that point.
Yeah, they certainly were. So we'd validated a permanent residency the year before through my wife for a visa entry. So she's a clinical midwife manager. So yeah, we were very fortunate to have actually validated visas around 4 or 5 months before the borders closed. Did
you have to come in and do the hotel quarantine for a week or so? Yeah.
We had the joy of doing 2 weeks quarantine in Sydney. Seems like a long time ago now.
Yeah. Different world, isn't it, back then? And you're up in Queensland now, is that right?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I live on the north of the Gold Coast.
Yeah,
it's a really beautiful spot here in Queensland. Can't complain with the weather and the beachfront lifestyle.
Yeah. How have the kids found it? Like, obviously, different scenery for them.
Initial transitions are always hard, especially coming in the other side of the world. We're fortunate enough that I do have some family here in north of Brisbane, but yeah, it was probably just that bedding in period. Coming to new schools, people speaking the same language but with a completely different accent. It's probably a big thing for the kids. But as I say, the Gold Coast has got so much to offer with the theme parks and the beach and things like that. So the kids have really embraced it. And they've not looked back.
As they grow up a little bit, are they sort of becoming more Australianised, would you say?
Definitely, especially the way they talk now. Obviously, my wife and I, we like to think we still have strong English accents. The children, not so much. They do speak with Australian accents now.
That's right. I've always thought that's a bit, a funny one, because if you move, you sort of grow up as an English kid kind of thing, and then you move to Australia, and then you're maybe in 5 years or so they're kind of Australian. I don't know. It's a funny one. Anyway, let's get into it a little bit. So your current role. You work as head of engineering?
Yeah, that's correct.
For a business called Genesis Care, is that right? So yeah, just tell me a bit about, I guess, what that role entails, what sort of projects you work on, and I guess how you help people as well.
Yeah, so Genesis Care is a business. It's a private oncology business. Really strong value proposition. It's got a turnkey solution. So for anybody that's going through a difficult time with a cancer diagnosis, Genesis Care offers everything from initial consult, nursing, simulation, to the cancer treatment itself, and then the follow-up. So, rather than darting in and out of different departments or different locations in the public system, our focus is really, as a business, is that patient-centric. My role as the head of engineering division for Australia, I look after a team of engineers. So I've got 5 state managers. So we're currently operating in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, SA and WA. And each one of their managers has their respective engineering team. Their function is to maintain all the linear accelerators. So that's the hardware that's actually delivering that radiation treatment to cancer patients. as well as CT scanners and ancillary imaging equipment as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big role, but it's something that I love. It's something that I'm very passionate about. Everybody, around the world probably can touch on somebody that's had cancer. So it's impacting their lives as well as the people themselves. So.
Yeah, and then so the engineers, they're the ones sort of doing the maintenance and repairs of the equipment across the sites nationally across Australia, is that right?
Yeah, so when I transitioned out of the military, I jumped into a field service role with one of our manufacturers of linear accelerators, and then kind of worked up through the management stream. So initially I came over to head up the Queensland Engineering division, and then was successful in an application for the national role a year later.
Yeah, cool. So the role now then, managing the team, the whole engineering field, I guess, by the sound of things. How much are you now doing pure sort of leadership management duties, responsibilities compared to actually doing the hands-on stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I don't touch the tools at all. Came off the tools as soon as you come into the national role. So it is pure leadership management of my team, as well as providing a steer to other senior managers. So there's an Australian leadership team which acts as a steer co for the business. So it's really important for me and other leaders to have a seat at that table, making strategic decisions collaboratively. I provide obviously a bit of a steer of installations, so new sites and services. So when Genesis Care's opening up a new centre, what sort of hardware are they putting in, what sort of resourcing needs to be provided, and then obviously we look at the repair and maintenance schedules for our existing footprint as well. Yeah,
so it's much more of a strategic type role now, leading the direction of the team. Is there a little sort of hands-on coaching, like not one-on-one, if say someone had a personal problem, is there sort of that kind of leadership and management involved as well with the team, or is it more just that structured strategic side of things with the role?
Yeah, so I have one-to-one sessions with all of my managers, as my direct reports. We catch up, and it's very much, myself, I class myself as a servant leader. My role is for them to be successful. If they're successful, I'm successful. And then one-to-ones, it's led by them. The topic, the agenda is always led by that individual. That could be professional or personal. Noting that I'll only have a certain capacity in the personal space, but it's always good to have that ear that I can lend to any one of my team members.
With those one-on-ones, then I'm really interested in this. So, do you sort of have a structure, say how they go, or do you just sort of have a roll with the punches type approach to those meetings and just sort of see how they go? It's really interesting how you say that the other person, they sort of, that you want them to lead it a little bit with they discuss what they want to discuss. What is your sort of a general approach to one-on-ones is where I'm going with that question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So what I tend to do is keep the cadence of the meetings very structured. Okay. So 2 weekly, and every 2 weeks we'll catch up for anywhere between 30 to 60 minutes, depending on what's been presented by one of my team beforehand. What I tend to focus on is what are the roadblocks that are currently stopping them from achieving what they want to in their roles. And as I say, that could be something in the wider business, i.e. they have a problem, or it could be with a commercial element or procurement or anything like that, or it could be, hey, how am I looking with professional development? What do I need to achieve to be successful in becoming a better people leader? So a bit of coaching and mentoring can be involved. As I say, what I definitely don't do is I don't use that time to sort of push my agenda back on the team. Instead, we hold a weekly management meeting, and that's where I'll call out the challenges from my role, as well as highlighting the successes of the team as well. I like to use more of a group forum for calling them things out.
Interesting how you're leading on how to be a leader as well to those managers, the state managers in between. I was going to touch upon this a little bit later, but we've sort of already got onto it. That this whole topic of leadership and management is obviously something that I think me and you have connected with on the past. I know it's a topic you're very passionate about and super interested in. Where did that sort of come from? I guess how can you describe your sort of leadership journey, so to speak?
Yeah, I'd probably say like I am super passionate about leadership. I think it's important, especially if you're spearheading a team, and it could be professional, or I've been lucky enough to play a lot of representative sports, especially through my military career. It probably struck me when I was in my mid-20s. The Royal Air Force, I was very fortunate that they do provide some great training courses. So you're attending them courses, and it really resonated with me when I had an instructor on a course, and they're delivering all these different methodologies of how to sort of engage people, how to get best results. And it's a very drag and drop scenario with a lot of things. So it could be, you're leading a rugby team, or you could be leading an engineering team. A lot of these skill sets that can be developed are transferable into different environments. So over the 20 years that I've been in engineering, it's not something where you always use the same methodology with everybody. You do need to wear a lot of different hats as a people leader. A lot of different leadership styles get different results, depending on the audience that you're tailoring it to.
Yeah. What about, you mentioned, depending on, it could be a sports team or a military team or an engineering team, some of it can be the same. What are some of the, common things you've seen, common traits that make good leadership, good leaders, character traits that have allowed people to be successful in leadership roles? What's common and similar between all those fields that have you found?
Yeah, I'd say authenticity. The first thing that you want to get as a leader is respect. If you respect your staff, they definitely will respect you. So be authentic self. You don't always have to have the best ideas in the room, but having transparency and providing clear feedback with the team over, hey, we've gone in this direction, it may not have worked. Here's the reasons why. Is really important. I'd say everything around trust. Trust engages a team, and then that develops into good culture. And once you've got a good culture in a team, and they start to bond, and you're all moving in the same direction, that's where the results, really great tangible results, will come thereafter.
How do you build that trust? 'Cause that's something I always think about. It's so important. Whenever I think about teams that have worked well, from a leadership down to the more junior people, there is that trust between, that the leader trusts the person to do their job, and then they trust the leader that they'll show them the way. But it takes time. How does someone earn that trust, do you think?
So for me, Joe, it's important that when you're coming into a new team, especially, so you can be the best leader, but good leadership requires good followership. So it's really important to get what I call your first follower. So somebody that you can connect with, somebody that's very aligned with what you want to do as a leader. Once you have a good first follower, that person is then essentially advocating for you as well. So maybe you're not in that call, or you're not presenting the direction. It's then that first follower that's saying, I believe that this is the correct way as well. Once you have one first follower, a second follower will come soon after, and then before you know it, you've got that buy-in from the team. So I think sometimes, as leaders, you do have to look for that low-hanging fruit. So if you are coming into a new environment, look to find something that's of benefit to the team, something that's frustrating them, a pain point that you can help with, and then just like you say, it's engaging them. As you mentioned earlier, one-to-ones are really important. That's that time where you and that individual can understand their roles. Everybody has a different way of operating, so it's important that you don't just blanket all of the people in your team in the same manner. You do have to tailor your approach to get best results from everyone.
Yeah. How do you tailor yours? Say, if there was two people in your team that were different personalities, or just they ticked in a different way, how sort of being that, I guess, chameleon, so to speak, how do you go about it?
Yeah, it's also, so when you engage in people, it's asking them, what do they think their strengths are. There's a really good mock-up scenario. I think it's called a Johari window. I often get the team to have a look at this, where they're identifying, their strengths, as well as their blind self. So it's also important to get feedback, from your manager and laterally. So things like 360 reviews, what are the team saying about each person's strengths and qualities? Sometimes people believe, they are unconsciously competent. They might not be aware how good they are. So it is important that, we share our different perspectives. If you were in my team and you feel like, you have a real strength in a certain area, that's great, but I might have another team member that's even stronger that need to lead in that area. That doesn't mean, I'm not picking you for any unknown reason. It's just, as a team, you don't want a team full of superstars. You want a team that are capable of doing different things and leading in different ways.
Yeah, fascinating. How have you developed as a leader, would you say? Because it's something that, you're not going to get right all the time, I imagine. It's a bit of a journey. Over the years, how have you progressed into a sort of leadership role, would you say?
It's always a journey. Like for any leader, the first thing is, you've got to acknowledge you're always going to grow. And like you say, you've got to acknowledge that you are going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But being transparent with your team around, look, a mistake has been made. It's not a blame. I don't induce a blame culture or finger pointing in my teams. It's more understanding the why. If it hasn't worked, why did it not work? Not who was responsible for that. I think the transition from the military to, coming into healthcare, there was a real strong change needed because I was very used to an autocratic leadership style in the military. It's the kind of, if they say jump, you say how high. You are given orders. The expectation is you do as you're told. So that works for that environment.
Okay.
It's brilliant. You get great outcomes because everybody's leaning in the same direction. But when you come into civilian roles, the culture is very different to that of the military. So what I've found is I definitely feel a servant sort of transformational leadership is well suited, i.e. I'm here to support you to be successful. I'm also trying to show you the way of what success looks like.
Yeah.
Happy to lead from the front, but equally I'd like you to take that step forward knowing I'm your safety net.
Yeah.
If you need a course correct, I'm there to support that. But again, you have to adapt and you have to grow as a leader. I watch a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books. There's different people. There's some great mentors out there. I know a lot of people probably follow Simon Sinek or and others like Gary Vee. Different styles. But overall, just probably acknowledging that you need to develop your own style and keep that authenticity with your team is important.
You mentioned the role of mentors there. Who have been some of your mentors in your career?
I've definitely had some technical mentors. So there's subject matter expert specialists. And then you've got some different managers. When I came into Genesis Care, I think it was important to get that same exposure to different seniors or executive managers and understand what their challenges are. I think learning from people's experience is often invaluable. Them sharing, hey, I was involved in this situation, or even what would you do? Let's discuss. So definitely having somebody, and I have that currently at Genesis Care. There's some great managers, which even I can reach out for, soundboard different situations. Yeah,
for sure. You also mentioned about you listen to lots of books and podcasts, in particular on the topic we were just talking about, leadership. Any, I guess, not recommendations, any ones that have been real standouts to you that have been, sort of real learning curves and thick books or podcasts or resources that you've learned a lot from that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I do like Simon Sinek's approach to a lot of things. I like Shadi Zarai as well. Brings a lot of skill sets, talking about how to be authentic, how to engage people. When you're in the room, the power of silence. I think one thing that I've often learned is we were born with one mouth and two ears. that says to me that listening is twice as important as speaking. So yeah, there's lots of invaluable stuff, especially on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Little snippets. E-learning is huge now in the professional networks. These courses through LinkedIn that people can jump on, I think, are fantastic.
Yeah, and that's something you're still investing in to this day. I guess you're still learning to be better and develop your craft as a leader, by the sound of things.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of them. If you stand still, up, you'll certainly be left behind. So it's important to keep going forward and keep picking up different tips and tricks.
Absolutely, yeah, I love it. Now, you've touched upon a few times your military career and background. How do you reflect on I think 12 years you served with them? How do you look back on that time?
Yeah, the Royal Air Force. So I joined very young. I was 18 when I joined the Air Force. And I probably didn't realise how much it had given me until I'd left and done that reflection. As I mentioned earlier, one of the first courses that I'd been on in leadership and management, and I went on 3 or 4 courses thereafter. Being exposed to different cultures, having travelled the world, played representative sports. Also, had tours to Iraq and Afghanistan, so working with different military nations. All of that, probably at the time you take it for granted or just assume it's normal. But when you come out, you realise how much that's given you and moulded you as a person, and some of the soft skills and disciplines that you learn are invaluable in any career pathway that you undertake.
I can imagine, you obviously you started at 18, you did it for 12 years. That's most of your 20s doing, in that career. Very different to, the average, 23-year-old living in the UK, what they get up to in a week, I can imagine. What about when you first started then, 18 years old, how did you get into it at that such a young age?
Well, I came from a military background, so my brother was military, my father, his father before that, all in the military. So it was a natural transition sort of thing because it's what I'd always known. I enjoyed the environment of the military, the camaraderie. So obviously choosing the Air Force and choosing a technical trade to enlist into is something that was really important for me, just to have a skill set, a transferable skill set that I could use, should I want to exit out into any industry after any period of time. But yeah, joining as an 18-year-old lad, going on basic training, learning key things like how to iron correctly, to present, your locker and make sure your bed's made in the correct manner. Probably things that I found quite, frustrating and quite trivial at the time. They're really the foundation of the discipline that's instilled thereafter. So, that's when they build on all of them soft skills, then give you the technical skills, and then, further on in your career, should you, be lucky as I was to go through the ranks, you're then given opportunities to become a people leader in that space.
And those, the soft skills, the discipline, those kind of things, obviously that's something I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've taken, into your life and your career after the military, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I still enjoy ironing, even to this day. But yeah, things like, they often say in the military, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. And things like that. So yeah, as I say, there was a lot that at the time you do take for granted, but when you come into a different environment or different companies, I've worked for Genesis Care and a couple of others, and you do really then start to appreciate some of the things that you've been exposed to.
Yeah, for sure. And what about the move to Australia? Obviously, 3 years coming up. What brought about that? What brought about sort of mixing things up and moving out here?
So it was my other boss that drove the move, my wife.
Okay.
She loves the heat. As I say, she's a super successful midwife. So she'd always had a passion to work abroad, and Australia, is somewhere that really she was drawn to. My sister already lives in Queensland, so it seemed like an easy transition for us as a family. And yeah, as I said before at the start, we've not looked back. it's been a great move for us.
And then moving, touching on the present, the past, the future. What do you? I know not always the easiest question to answer, but you don't have a crystal ball. But what do you think sort of the future holds for you, say professionally and also just life in general over here?
So professionally, I'm really happy here at Genesis Care.
Yeah.
We do have a great team. I really, as I said before, I really enjoy what we do. It does make a direct impact positive impact on people's lives here in Australia, because we are seeing a lot of patients, particularly here in country compared to the UK. We deal with a lot of skin cancers, which, as we probably don't see as much of, because in the UK you don't hardly have as much sun. But yeah, from a career perspective, Genesis Care is such a fast-growing business. We're operating here in Australia, the US, UK, and Spain. Engineering is always something I'm going to be passionate about. There's potentially career advancements. There's always somebody above me in the engineering stream.
Yeah.
So, I'd be very happy to stay with this company and grow with them. Yeah,
for sure. And I want to just ask one more question back on the leadership piece. Yeah. It just sort of came to me. If it was more around your recommendations, so say there was someone who was kind of an aspiring leader, so to speak. They're maybe a bit younger, a bit more junior, a bit less experienced than say yourself, or maybe even saying this, what advice you'd give maybe to a younger version of you that was looking to improve or looking to just be a great leader. What would you say to that person? What advice would you give them?
I'd say, be curious, ask questions.
Okay.
So before, you don't always have to get to the textbooks and read things. A lot of experiences come with having conversations, like we are today. So go and find, if you want to get that exposure, go and find a mentor. Ask somebody to mentor. It would be very complimentary to, if somebody approached me outside of my engineering team and said, hey, would you have any bandwidth that we could sit down and discuss, different leadership styles and your experience and your career pathway. That's probably the direction I'd give to anybody. There's obviously educational routes that people can invest in, which I think are very, very beneficial. Only now, since I've come back, come to Australia, have I gone back into education to complete an MBA, and that gives you, an abundance of different exposure points in business, from commercial and business acumen to different leadership styles again. I'd just say if anybody's wanting to push in the direction of leadership and management, go and find that mentor. And you don't always have to be, in a managerial position to be a good leader.
Sure.
There are skills that are coupled together in them roles. But to be a good leader, as I said earlier, you could be on a sports pitch. It's just taking that opportunity to go and ask them questions. I think.
What's more valuable, would you say, someone to ask the questions, to be curious? I completely agree, by the way. Someone who's go and get interested in the topic and learn. What's more valuable, though, doing that sort of the educational piece, the study, the learning, or actually the doing? Say, throwing yourself into a leadership position. What do you learn more from, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's the age-old story of, education versus the work experience. And that's not just for leadership, that's in a lot of different industries. People often talk about, going to university for 4 years versus somebody that's come into industry and actually has 4 years experience, but not that academic exposure. It's great to have both, but as I say, it's probably from an academic perspective, you definitely will learn that committed approach to studying, writing assignments. As much as people might think it's quite arduous, doing that pushes the research side more than, somebody that's not going down that route. There's a requirement for then that person to try and find as many avenues of support or information. So again, I don't think it's just a hard and fast rule that one's better than the other. I think, different people learn in different ways as well. And that's something that, a lot of leaders need to acknowledge. Some people are very visual. Some people are, very academic. So that goes back to, when you're delivering things to your teams, whether it be change management, some people might stand in front of everybody and present just a speech, and it may only resonate with 80% of the room because 20% might want to see slides, so that the penny drops that a little bit quicker. So it's important, that if you are going down that route and you are providing mentorship for people, it's just to get that feedback that, what you're actually saying and the pace or the way the method of delivery is actually resonating with them.
Yeah, gotcha. Mate, I've got one final question for you. This is typically how I close up these shows. Rounds things off a little bit, well, quite nicely. I think it's more around, and you can take this whichever way you like, personally, professionally. It's around the idea of success. So what does success mean to you in your life? And yeah, like I said, take it whichever way you like.
Success for me, I think the question that you asked earlier would be something that's really, success and valuable for me, is when you asked, is there anybody that you can reflect on that's been inspirational or as a leader in your career? Success for me would be if people that I've, engaged through my career path, if their answer is, I had this manager, or I had this person that I went to for advice, his name was Karl, and he taught me this and things like that. As I say, touching on being a servant leader, it's about engaging people and being that support function to let them grow. So yeah, that's what success would look like for me, is for people to come back and say, this is the person that pushed me in this direction, and I have been successful, and that person was integral to my success in their career.
Outside of your career, like not necessarily professional, what does success mean to you as an individual?
Outside, I'm a very big sports fan. I've hung up the rugby boots and stuff a few years ago. Success for me now, I play a lot of golf. So I've started playing a bit more competitive golf now.
Nice.
So success for me, from a personal perspective, probably be breaking 80 on the golf course.
Oh wow, yeah, right. I won't be taking you on at the course anytime soon, mate. Karl, thank you very much for joining me on the show. Loads of great insights there, especially into the topic of leadership. I'm going to be listening to this episode again for sure. I'm going to be taking down some notes. That was some really great stuff. Appreciate you coming on and sharing all that, sharing your journey, doing some really great stuff, especially in the current field as well with Genesis Care. Really great job you're doing. So thank you again, mate. Any final thoughts, any final words?
No, just keep doing what you're doing, Joe. I think these podcasts are, as you say, are invaluable, and even if you're jumping back on to listen to it, there's probably an abundance of people that are going to be doing the same for all the people that you've had on the studio. So no, I appreciate you inviting me. It's been great to catch up.
Great to talk, mate. Thank you very much. Karl Howard, cheers.
Thanks.